Well, today we got Brandon Prichard with us, and he's running for the District 8 House. And Brandon, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What made you, as a 21-year-old kid, want to run for office in North Dakota?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an accumulation of things. I saw what happened in my district, in my community, District 8 last election cycle, and it was very distressing for me and a lot of people to see, the big money that's in politics and the big power that's in politics. But more generally, I just want to get some conservative values to represent my community, the community that I've been a part of my entire life. And in fact, I have a long legacy. My family is from that area. My grandfather was from the Wilton Baldwin area. So this has been a community that I have lived in my entire life. And I just want to bring some conservative, really good values to the legislature in that community.
So, like myself, you're one of those North Dakota kids that grew up here, and then you left North Dakota. Explain to me, or tell our audience, what's it mean to get a worldview outside of North Dakota and then get the opportunity to come back home?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, not only that, I'm pretty much fluent in Arabic, Ati Kalamaluga Arabia. I've studied French. So, I mean, I've definitely gotten a world experience. I would like to travel a little bit more, but having the experience and being able to see different cultures and different ideas is really important. But after all this time, after all the traveling and stuff that I've gone on and exploration, I really do think that North Dakota it really is the best place to, grow up. And it's the best place to have a family, and the values here are so strong. But I don't want to undermine the importance of seeing the outside world in Minneapolis and stuff. But I've always said I never want North Dakota to become Minneapolis, and that's for sure.
Why do you say that, Brandon?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, we've seen what has happened in the last couple of years here with the police and the destruction and what they've put on the police officers and security and everything in Minneapolis. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that, and you also have to look at, what the city of Minneapolis has done in relations to, like, I go on the light rail whenever I go to Minneapolis. It's so dangerous. If I was a woman that was, my age, I would never go on the light rail. Mm-hmm. But that, and the taxation is so high. I don't know how they have businesses coming to Minneapolis. The regulations are brutal. And if you have Ilhan Omar as your representative, I don't want her as my representative.
A lot of people say that North Dakota is the place that gets is about 10 to 20 years behind everywhere else in the country. And I think we're starting to see that in education, where there's stuff that, the last legislative session, we had the CRT conversation, and they said that, well, it's not even here in North Dakota, but it's still creeping in. What's your take, having worked in schools in different areas in other states, and how that affected those areas?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've always thought it's really dangerous when we separate morality and patriotism from education. And over the last 40 years, probably, that's what our education system has slowly done. If you take over the environment, you can then control the curriculum. And that's what school boards around the country, teachers organizations have done slowly. Is to overtake the environment of the classroom. And once you can control, the feelings and emotions and everything of the classroom, you can then get your way into the curriculum of the classroom. And I've seen that working in Minneapolis. It's very sad. I worked in history, mentoring for almost 3 years in Minneapolis when I was an undergrad. And it is distressing to see what some of the students are taught about history. And it's like, I just think that history shouldn't be partisan. And that's what they try to do. They try to, like, force an ideology. And I worked at a high school that was an all Native Americans high school. And it's like, you're making them feel like they're victims today, based upon their past. And it's like, we should just teach them general history and say that today is, it's a new start. It's America is the best place to grow up, regardless of who you are or what you are. If we don't teach kids that and give them opportunities, it's like they're going to just feel like they're discriminated against, and that mentality is going to continue, poverty, and it's going to continue a bad value system and a bad moral system.
What made you, as a 21-year-old decide to run for office? And what do you think about those statements where people say that young people don't want to be involved?
Yeah, well, I going to the University of Minnesota, you should see how young people are involved only with the wrong ideas. um, but I wanted to get involved because I really do believe in the values of, my faith. I'm a strong Christian, but of course I believe in the strong values of conservatism and of responsibility when it comes to fiscal matters, but also education, and so many more issues. I think that I want to get involved in this legislative process because there's so many needs that have to be fixed in our state, because the answers that the legislators have given us half the time are not conservative. They say they're conservative, but they're not. So I think that we need some good leadership that's based upon principles and not handshaking of lobbyists and other politicians.
What's it mean to be a North Dakotan?
Oh my gosh, where do I even start with that? I think if you're going to ask what it means to be a North Dakotan, it starts with the family values. I think Minnesota is great. I think but North Dakota has such strong family values. It's not even questionable. I think it means hard work. It means, overcoming so much adversity that so many people have. I traveled around the state this last year with Senator Kramer and saw what the farmers had to deal with the drought, with so many other things. It really is overcoming diversity, unlike any other place in this country. So that resilience, those family values, and faith, that's what makes a North Dakotan a North Dakota.
Do you want to see changed, or what change do you think you can bring to the House in North Dakota?
Yes, I think, first of all, we need to stop funding pet projects in the middle of nowhere, when we have such a high tax burden on homeowners. I think that's one thing. I think we need to reduce the tax burden on homeowners. I want to have, we're ranked dead last in the country, according to the Cato Institute, for education freedom. I think that parents are the ones that need to decide where their kids go to school and how they are educated. So I'm very pro education freedom. I'm very pro-life. I think that we need to stand up for life at every turn in every situation. And I'm very pro-gun. I think that the attacks on the Second Amendment with red flag laws in the last few sessions have been very dangerous on our Second Amendment rights. So I bring all these values to the table and a lot more. And I'm very supportive of non-preferential markets. I don't think that the government should be involved in picking winners and losers of markets. So I think all of this is an accumulation of just bring really, really strong conservative principles to the table and bring conservative answers to the table, when the legislature, I believe, in the last few sessions has not brought conservative solutions.
One of the things we're seeing in North Dakota politics is, over the last couple of years, is people focusing on national issues and national campaigns, and they're kind of forgetting what's going on back here at home. Talk to us a little bit about how important it is to be involved at the local level.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that people in our state and people in Emmons and Burley County, District 8, they're kind of tired of national politics. I think that local issues is what's going to win local races. I've made a lot of phone calls and I've talked to a lot of people, and they're worried about the carbon pipeline going through Emmons County and Burley County more than they're worried about what's going on in national politics, or they're worried about the local property tax more than they're worried about the federal tax. And I think that that's a very good point that you make. If we're going to win local elections, you can't focus on the federal issues. You need to focus on what people are facing in their everyday lives, and those are always local issues.
One of the things that we're seeing come to light in local politics is the way that the Republican and Democratic districts work, and kind of the importance of being part of those. And a lot of people don't know out there that there's local little conventions that happen to vote in people like yourself, and our citizens just don't even know about that. Talk about a little bit about the importance of being members of those committees and getting involved at that level.
Sure. Well, it would really help if the chairs and the committees were transparent about these things. In District 8, we just had a reorganization in District 8, and they advertised after the deadline for the new member sign up. So it's like, what's the point of even, advertising if new members can't even sign up? So being transparent is one of the huge things I think that we need in districts. But more generally speaking, I guess the importance of being involved in that is, we are the ones that are going to represent you. That those candidates that are running for office, if you don't go to the meetings, if you don't, you're trying to essentially represent somebody that's going to serve you. So if you don't get involved in those meetings, if you don't vote for your district chair and executive committee, if you don't go to the nominating conventions, you don't know what you're going to get. So those are extremely important events that you have to go to, and it's only like 1 or 2 days out of the year, if not every 2 or 3 or 4 years. It's not a huge obligation to go to, but it's something that will really impact the future of your businesses, your family, your grandchildren, education in our state. All of the issues that you care about really can accumulate and reach ahead at those district levels and those district meetings.
So in your press release, you said that you're reform minded. Can you explain that to us?
Absolutely. One of the big things that I think that we need in this state is term limits. And that's funny. I've said this a couple of times to people and on other interviews that I'm a young guy and I want term limits. And I want term limits not because I want to be, I don't want to be a career politician. I think that that is what our state needs. I think one of the most dangerous things to North Dakota and heck any state in our country is politicians that live in their office and become basically, the joke is a swamp monster, but it's true. They just live in those elected positions. I think that that's very, very distressing and dangerous to North Dakota and to its people, because then you shake hands with lobbyists, you meet other politicians, you gain special interests. But politicians and public servants are always supposed to represent you. They're supposed to represent the people of their districts and nobody else. And I think that's, if we have term limits, and that's one of the things that I mean when I say I'm reform minded, we can help people better and we can serve people better as elected officials. But reform-minded also means, reducing taxation on homeowners. I think the tax rates are, egregious. It also means reforming our education policy to get radical ideologies out of schools, but also allowing parents to be the people that choose what their, kids go to school, what they're learning. It means protecting the Second Amendment without any question. And I think that is all, in the line of reform-minded.
The other day when we were chatting, we talked about one of the things that's growing in North Dakota on top of those tax fees for homeowners is just the fees that are out there, whether it's a hunting fee or a vehicle fee or whatever else. You mentioned that you'd like to get those lower. What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting that we have an $8 billion legacy fund that we gain huge interest on every year. And we go and spend it on pet projects instead of, keeping fees the same or even lowering fees for, a number of things. I think it's ridiculous, to be quite frank with you, that we're going to spend it on a pet project in the middle of nowhere, compared to helping people like you, like everybody, like my voters, making sure that their fees to the state are lower. So I think it's just common sense.
What are some of the things that you see in North Dakota that you could help improve upon?
Absolutely. I think one thing that a lot of elected officials don't have on their radar is, the money that we're investing in the legacy fund, where that is actually going. There's been some really good reporting at KX News on just what we are investing in the legacy fund and what our North Dakota tax dollars are going towards and revenue is going towards. There's a lot of evidence to show that we are investing large sums of money in geopolitical threats like China, like Russia. And I think that this is horrible for our state and for the security of our country. So what I would do if I was in the legislature is I would work with other legislators to write a bill that would take that money that we're investing in countries like China in geopolitical threats and bring that back home to North Dakota, or invest that in new types of assets that are not included in the legacy fund, such as cryptocurrency or non-fungible assets that have a very high potential. But if this doesn't pass, I think at least we need to bring that money back home. I think it belongs in North Dakota rather than in the pockets, of Chinese billionaires.
What do you think it takes to raise kids in North Dakota the way you and I were raised? You had mentioned that, and yet there's so many limitations on what kids can do nowadays in our state.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that you make a really good point there about limitations on people that are young. Um, if you don't have experience, you're not going to be able to move up in the job career. You're not going to get the life experiences that I have been fortunate to have, and it sounds like you have been fortunate to have as well. We need to bring vocational education and technical education back in schools. We need to have in classrooms. I think that we need to have like cybersecurity classes, but we also need to have like tax and insurance classes. So when students go into the real world, they actually know what they're getting into. But beyond that, I think that one of the big things that has, hurt students is that they sit in front of a screen for 8 hours, or they sit in the classroom for 8 hours, and they don't get out into the community. Let's get students out into the community. When I was in high school, we had a really good program that would allow students to have an internship for 2 or 3 periods out of the day, and they would actually get to go out and work at a law firm. They get to work out at a dentist's office, in the local dentist office or something. That is how we get students the hands-on experience that they need. But also, more generally, outside of the classroom, we need to stop the regulations. We were talking the other day about how if you want to be a lifeguard, you have to be like 16 now or something. We need to make sure that kids can, in the summer or whenever it may be, can get the opportunity to learn hands-on what they need to know for real-world experience, and that includes, as I mentioned, like taxes and insurance, but it also includes that real-world experience that the state has regulated pretty heavily.
Voters of District 8 to know about Brandon.
Yeah. The big thing is that above anything else, I am not a politician. I want to be a public servant, and I want to fight for you in the legislature. I don't want to fight for anybody else. I have always believed that my community is a top-notch community, one of the best, not only in our state, not only in the country, but in the world. And the hard work and determination of our people need to be represented with conservative values in the legislature, and not through a career politician, but through a public servant that wants to serve them. And additionally, I think that it's really important that we bring real leadership to the table that is conservative, that is principled. I always say that I lead with my principles before my resume or anything else. And I worry that too many people lead with their resumes, lead with what they've done in the past, with their business experience, instead of what they stand for. And I lead with what I stand for, and what I believe in my heart and in my mind, rather than the what I've done in my business career or anything else.
Okay. Anything we haven't covered yet that you'd like to let the people in North Dakota know?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, in nature, I'm a fighter. I'm somebody that really, really wants to stand up for those values that I know are true. I have a great education behind me, but more importantly, I have a great family. I have a great value system, and I have a great faith behind me. And that's what drives me, is my faith, my values, and my family. And that's always what I am going to lead with, and what I'm going to base my decisions on. And more importantly, the final thing is, I want to fight for you. So that's why I am running, and that's why I'm excited to be in this race.
Well, thanks for coming and talking with us today, Brandon, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.